What's up, guys? Welcome to the Sesh. Rob.
What's up? We're here with Mr. Rick Garcia.
Yes, Senior Deputy Rick Garcia.
Senior Deputy.
So the reason I wanted to get you on is because I've already done this training with you a couple weeks back, and I know there's so much more to it, but there was something that you specifically said in that training. This is not the same world that we live in, that we used to live in anymore. And that kind of like made me think a lot. I was like, man.
You got here and told me about it.
And I that kept going through my head because I have kids in school. And I know a lot of my friends have kids in school. And it's a very touchy subject about what we're about to talk about. But I think it's super important for people to understand that this isn't the same world that we live in.
You're right. It's not. And that's the thing is, and it's not just it's not the same world. The thing is this, it's actually been around a lot longer than we think. But now we're starting to see, because of the way that the media picks up on these stories, the way that we've kind of become a smaller world, we're seeing more and more of the reporting on these instances. And that's what makes it tough, is it seems now like there's just this avalanche of violence. And the truth is, we have to, as a community, we have to start preparing. This is no different than
Evolving.
than everything. Yeah, Uvalde is just the latest one of an incident that brings it to our attention, and we have to do better. We have to face this head on, and we have to do it. It's kind of like the fire drills at schools. I know we talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm sure 50-something years ago when they started doing fire drills at schools, it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. Parents were upset. The kids were upset. There's alarms, and we've got to get out of our classrooms, and we have to go outside, and there's fire trucks. It's probably a horrible event.
Yeah, back in the 50s when the nukes and stuff were out, they were doing
the Cold War drills.
Cold War drills. Yeah,
and you see all of these things are horribly uncomfortable, but they serve an end purpose. And when we look at the fire drills, how many school fires happen now in public school fires? Kids have not, there hasn't been a public school fire that's claimed a life in decades of a child, because we are so adamant about those drills, and they've become normal. We've said, okay, listen, we have to deal with this. And now we live in a world where fire safety is normalized. We see fire hydrants. We see fire extinguishers. We see fire hoses.
I never thought of that.
We see alarms. We see pull alarms on the walls, and they don't trigger us. They don't upset us. We've just said, hey, this is the world we live in, where fire is an issue and it claims lives, and we're going to do better than that. Yeah. And I think we have to reach that point when it comes to these horrible random acts of violence, where we have to not normalize it, but we have to say it's here, and we need to find ways to deal with it so that we can minimize the impact that it has in our lives.
So would you say that that aside from educating and informing people that these are real scenarios that we need to practice how to defend ourselves from or protect ourselves from, would you say that eventually schools are going to have to start developing budgets for, I don't know, Kevlar vests that they keep, like you said, fire hydrants? I'm thinking.
Well, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a certain amount of growing pains. There's going to be a certain amount of looking at things. If you were to research school products right now, they're selling bunkers that go inside of classrooms. Wow. These steel boxes that take up, a quarter of the classroom space that you can go into, and they stop bullets and bombs and everything else. I think that's the extreme side over here. I think that, you do other things where schools say, okay, you know what, we're going to start teaching from locked classroom doors. We're going to start having one entrance and one exit for our schools. We're going to have visitors come into the front office. There's going to be a vestibule in the front office where they get buzzed in, and then they state their business, whatever it is. We check their ID. We run it through the Raptor program, whatever the case may be. We verify that they have a kid in school, maybe have them walk through a metal detector that's there, and then we open the second door for them, and we bring them in. I think that we're gonna see that we're gonna get a really
kind of like TSA
things,
all of a sudden.
Really extreme things that people are gonna want. But we're gonna have to find the balance here in the next couple of years, because at the end of the day, we're talking about educating our kids. Mm-hmm. And I've got kids, and I want them to be in a comfortable, safe environment. Their young minds are very malleable, and we don't want to instill fear. We don't want to have a culture of unsafe and fear, going through their mind.
Would you say that's here regardless whether we want it or not?
See, I think that this is the thing, though. It strikes us in a different way than it strikes them, because we grew up in a different world. Mm-hmm. So this change to the way that things are currently happening it hits us, it impacts us, because it's a 180. Mm-hmm. Our kids are growing up in this world. Yeah. This is their world. So just like, for example, we just look at TSA. Okay, I remember going up and running down the aisleway as my dad would come out of the airplane. And it was not a big deal.
Now you can't get
so
anywhere.
now you can't get anywhere here. So
Yeah.
for me, the whole TSA thing was very impactful.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
change. For my kids, they never knew anything before that. So TSA is normal.
It's normal.
That's their culture. And so I think what we have to do is we have to go through these growing pains the best way that we can, the smartest way that we can, so that our kids can continue to grow up in an appropriate culture of safety and security. Not extreme, but appropriate.
Appropriate. Interesting how you say that. So I wanted to use this podcast as a resource. I know school's about to start up again, and I know you as one person can only reach so many people. So we love to do our part to be able to share this. So I kind of want you to go through the pitch, maybe a condensed version. So if they need extra training, they can call you up and find out what you need. So, but please.
Yeah, great. So the Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office, we have a program. So this program started about 5-6 years ago. Basically, there are a lot of different programs out there that deal with active shooter. Okay, we kind of looked at some of those programs. We became instructors in some of those programs, and we, how do I put this? Our sheriff challenged us. Our sheriff, Eddie Guerra, is our sheriff here in Hidalgo County. He always challenges us to do better. Okay, so we saw these programs, and we weren't, they were kind of cookie cutter, kind of like learn this material and you can teach it everywhere. And he challenged us to do better at his academy, and I'm one of the instructors at the academy. So we created this new program. And it's nothing new. It's not new material. We didn't invent anything. What we did was we got all the existing best practices through FEMA, through the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and we just put them in a different way, a different manner to educate people. But we could be a little bit more, it's a little bit more malleable to the environment.
Okay.
So for example, the church training will be one different training from the school, then for a business, then for whatever the case may be. When we get a call from someone who says, hey, we would like some training, it's a multi-tiered process. We'll go out there, we'll assess the facility, we'll look at it, say, hey, these doors are good, this you need to put another type of lock on here, we need a light here, these bushes need to be cut. All of this is called the CPTED, the Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. So what it is we look at the building and we say, okay, let's start from the outside, because security begins on the outside. So once we've done that, we've given an assessment and we talk about all kinds of things. People are usually pretty surprised about the little teeny weeny things that
make a big difference.
What would be one of those things, for example?
Man, so I think, so if I had to give everybody a homework assignment, it would be this. I would want you to go to your front door or your back door of your house, okay? And on the frame of the door, so the frames are wooden frames, okay? On the frame, you're gonna have some hardware. So you're gonna have the hinges on one side, okay? And on the other side, you're gonna have those little, you ever seen the little metal pieces that have the hole in them that are deadbolts and everything's gonna go through? So those little pieces right there.
Yeah, they go in the door jam.
Right, so they go in there. So I want you to do is take a Phillips head screwdriver, and I want you to take out one of those screws, whether it's from the hinge or it's from the plates. Okay, and what you'll notice is that screw it's no longer than a 1/2 inch.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's because that's how they come in the contractor packs. What I would encourage people to do is this: take those screws out. All right, now go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, and get a box of 3-inch deck screws, wood screws, like if you're going to build a deck in your backyard. Okay, and then take out the baby screws, everything that's attached to the wall, to the frame of your wall. Take out those baby screws and put in the big ones. And now what's changed is this: if someone were to kick your door, when they kick your door and it's got those small screws, the door doesn't break. Doors don't break.
Hinges break.
The hinges, the frame breaks because it's only attached by those small screws, and it can't deal with the physical force. Now you put on those larger screws, those plates and those hinges are no longer attached to that thin little piece of wood in the frame. They're now attached to your home, to the studs that are inside. So when somebody kicks your door now, it is a completely different scenario. And there's a lot of videos out there that have shown law enforcement agencies demonstrated this, where they have a one door they'll kick it in with one kick, and then all they do is $3 changing out the screws, and they're 10 to 15 kicks in, and the door still doesn't
Still
get wet.
standing.
Wow, just
So,
by
that's
changing your
just
screws.
changing screws. So we'll go through businesses. We go through, this is like daycares and adult daycares, and we make all of these suggestions. Okay, so we all of these things. After that, what we do is our actual training. So for school districts, we've been very fortunate that a lot of school districts have trusted us with their training. From Sherryland, Mission, Mercedes, South Texas ISD, a lot of the ID academies. We've had a great footprint here in the Valley. So then what we do there is we train the administrators. We bring in the superintendents, we bring in all the main administrators, and we start to talk about the best practices, their policies. Is it the best thing right now? Is it what is working? We talk about, for example, the standard response protocol, which is kind of what everybody uses as a standard for how to deal with these issues in school. Once we agree that we're on board together, that nothing I'm going to teach is going to be contrary to their policies, and we're able to reinforce their policies, we then begin training the staff, the teachers, everyone from the nurses and the teachers to the bus drivers, the custodians, the lunch personnel, 100% trained throughout the district the exact same way. So we get that continuity in training. Everybody's thinking the same way. And then after that, I think the most exciting part, and the part that everybody tends to forget, is we then spend that last week training the parents and the community of that school district. Now, this is important because we have a very good plan. Law enforcement and the school districts work very closely together, whether it's a school, ISD police department, or the local ISD or the sheriff's office, whatever it may be. We have very close relationships with the school. And let me tell you, here in the Rio Grande Valley, from everything that I've seen, they're very well prepared, very well trained, very professional. But Uvalde showed us something. Uvalde showed us that in that triangle of training, which is the schools, law enforcement, we forgot that other piece. That other piece is the parents and the community. And that showed itself in Uvalde when we had a critical incident and everything was happening, and parents just began to rush to the school.
Rush to the school.
Yeah.
Now listen, I'm not blaming the parents. What they did was 100% instinctive. They are blameless in this. But you have to understand that when you have people rushing the school, it completely messes up the response. Everything that's been planned. You now have law enforcement officers that have to deal with the parents. You now have 50, 60
And you don't
cars.
know how many of the parents are threats.
No, and that's the thing. Like, I want you to think about it. What if, for example, something was happening in a school, and I'll just use myself. I'm dad. I'm not a cop. I'm just regular dad. That school services the neighborhood around it. So let's say I'm not working today, and all of a sudden my 14-year-old daughter calls me, and she's screaming, and I can hear gunshots in the background, and Dad, something's happening at the school. What am I going to do? I don't tell you. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. And this is Texas. I'm going to grab a gun, one of my many guns, and I'm going to run to that school, and I'm going to go save my baby. But what happens when I'm running through that hallway and I run into that first responding officer?
And you have a gun.
And I have a gun in my hand. What's that first responding officer going to do? And let me be completely honest with you. He's going to do exactly what he was trained to do. And it's going to be a horrible accident. A horrible accident. We train our officers to think about these things, and we put out these scenarios. But at the end of the day, if we can avoid that through educating our community and having our community buy into our plan, then that's going to make all the difference in the world. And so we talk to the parents about, this is what the school does. These are the 5 types of drills. If your child comes home and tells you about something, this is what it means. In the event of an emergency, these are the texts you're going to get. This is why you're getting those texts. This is what we need from you. And when we get the parents in the community to understand the school response, everyone buys in. It becomes a coalition. It becomes a community
Team effort.
thing. It's a team.
Well, there's an answer to the question, what's going on? What's going on? My kid's in that school. But if the parents know that the facility has, the faculty have been trained, the sheriff department has instructed them, there's a very good, clear understanding on what the protocol is, and the parents are involved, it's some sort of relief of...
It's important.
Comfort.
I mean, we've got kids. I want to know. I want to know that when I get that text that says, attention parents of Smith Elementary School, we are currently in lockdown. Do not come to Smith Elementary School. Stand by for a reunification location. And then 2-3 minutes later, when I get that text, it says, attention parents of Smith Elementary School, we are going to begin busing the children to Jones High School for reunification with parents. As a parent, I have a decision to make.
Do I go there?
Do I go to Jones High School where they're telling me we're going to reunify with the kids because they're going to start busing them there? Or do I go to Smith Elementary School because that's where my kid is?
My kid is in danger.
Right. So, and then that's the thing. When you are able to talk to parents, when you're able to get them to buy into and understand that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, there is a plan. And when they look us in the eye and they can say, you know what, we now understand how this hinders or helps, then as a community, you have a much, much better response. A lot of things happen in Uvalde, and these things are coming out. And let me tell you, law enforcement in general is just as upset as everyone else. And you know, I don't like to really go into it too much because all the facts, all the findings haven't been established yet. So it's very hard to. But I can tell you that some of the things on the surface that we've seen from the very first day were things that, like, for example, parents, you know, that showed up. And like I said, they're blameless.
Yeah.
If I didn't know better, I'd have been right there too.
Yeah.
But we can do better. We can learn from this, from all the things that happened. And
Would you
we
say
have a
that
responsibility.
there was a lack of, without getting into Uvalde too much, I would say, after just meeting you for a few moments, is that I think that to me it was evident that, or it is evident that there was a lack of understanding between the community, law enforcement, and the schools as to what to do during a shooting,
Right,
an active
and that's the
shooter.
thing. It's always going to be a matter of education, and it's not. A lot of times you can see that the cities and law enforcement, they are always giving opportunities to educate. And so I'm just going to give an example, and I'm not going to name the school district, but of the many school districts I've taught, okay, when we get to that final week of parent training, I'll have a school district that has, for example, 15,000 kids. Okay, so let's pretend that one adult cares for each one of those kids, and we're Latinos, so that's not true. Okay? We're just going to say one to keep the math simple. When I do that parent training that final week, and we do some during the day, we do them in the evening, and we usually do one on the weekend so that we can touch everybody.
Yeah, everybody has an opportunity.
Yeah, out of that school that's got 10 to 15,000 kids, the most parents in the entire week combined, the combined number, will be 40.
Wow.
And that's because we pitch it, we put it on their board, they send notes home to the parents, it's on the Facebook page. The parents or the teachers are calling the parents about this training. Everything is being thrown out, but at the end of the day, life, you know, whatever the reason is, we're there. We've made the training available. We want to talk to the parents. We want to talk to the community about what's going on, but there hasn't been a great response. I don't know what the post-Uvalde world is going to look like in that, but I've had a taste of it. We did the Brooks County Independent School District. We did their training a few weeks ago. Great school district. Walked through those schools there in Falfurrias, and man, well maintained. These guys are all over it. Surprised me. They were just really, really great job. And so at the end of all that training, we did the community and the parent training. And we just did one because we figured, hey, small community, they only have 4 schools. You know, we'll be able to hold them in. And in that one class, I had more parents than I've ever had in any other of these school districts.
These mega school districts,
Yeah, these mega school districts. And those parents were there, and they were involved, and they had questions. And the school board stood right next to me. The superintendent stood right next to me, and we talked to the community. And at the end of the day, the parents asked me a funny question, which I'm going to share with you guys. So I'm getting ready to retire soon. And so I actually bought a little ranch out there in Fremont, you know, just outside of Falfurrias. And so one of the parents, I talked about that during my class. So one of the parents looked me dead in the eye during the question and answer and said, "Rick, you said you've got a small daughter, right?" And I said, "Yeah." They said, "Would you put your daughter in our school?" And I looked them right back and I said, "Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
That's my daughter. And I will put my daughter in your school district all day long because you guys are tracking. You guys are doing everything right. And the little things that you know you can do better, you have plans for them." So that sort of engagement is priceless.
Yeah.
And if we could somehow motivate our community to be a part of the conversation and a part of the training, that would, I think, is going to be a big step for us.
I think when you have access to people like yourself, the professionals that are in this industry, and you seem like just a regular person. Like it's sometimes I feel like it's very hard to approach. Like it's very okay. Let me word this correctly. Some people seem unapproachable.
And cops, we're cops.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, when do we talk? The only
There's an
time we talk is
Yeah.
we talk when you're on the side of the road and I'm behind you with
That's
the lights on, and you're telling me I did stop, and I'm telling you no, you didn't stop. And that's the only conversation we ever
Exactly.
have, you know. And so it's unfortunate because we have a lot that we want to share, and on the flip side of that, the community has a lot that they want to share. And sometimes we don't engage the best way that we can. I can tell you, like, for example, our sheriff's office, we have our social media pages. We have our officers that go out into the community and they talk to the kids, they go to schools. We're very, very active in attempting to engage our community. We train our officers to our deputies and the officers from other departments that take part in our training. We train to be members of our community to be, servants of the public. We're public servants, and that mindset is now just as important, if not more important than ever. When the last thing we would ever want is a divide between law enforcement and the communities. When we have this current situation, this type of world that we're living in, we want to talk to you. Talk to a police officer. I tell people all the time, they'll say like, well, I saw something suspicious, but I didn't want to call because I don't want to bother you guys. And I kind of smirk and I tell them, listen, call us. Because listen, the only time that we're going to calls is when people call us.
Yeah. And
I jokingly tell them, listen, if you don't call us, then we don't have anything to go to. So we're just going to drive around and give everybody tickets. Give us something to do, And of course I'm joking, but I try to tell them, listen, call us. There's only so many officers. We're talking about 500-600, people in our community. There's only one officer for those 500-700 people. We rely on our communities to be able to do our job better, to serve better.
They're a whole set of eyes, out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you can get that trust and we can build that friendship with our communities, that partnership, that's huge.
Yeah.
People should call. It's funny because you and I drove by. There was an individual a day or two ago on Trenton and 10th Street, and he had a little crossbow and he had these two flags.
Yeah, I've heard some stories about this guy. Yeah, I haven't seen.
I remember. When was this?
This was like 2 or 3 days ago. Like we turned on Trenton.
Oh yeah. That was yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
Yes, we got back from working out.
This is too early. We got back from working out. We saw the guy, right? The kid. Well, they closed down the HEB. They went on lockdown because he was out there. So it makes me think that we live in a different time. Like nowadays, back then people used to move to a community and look at the school and say, well, academically, what does it do? What are the, what is the athletic program like? But now parents have to go and look at schools and say, well, do they have an active shooter training? Is there this in place? And so when you talk about the world changing, right now when you said that about Falfurrias or Prima, would you put your daughter in this school? And you were like, yeah, of course. Well, yeah, because now that. And
it's interesting because I've lived in the Valley for, I guess, about 17, 18 years when I got back from Iraq. And we've all driven through Falfurrias and Fremont.
Yep.
And I'm going to be in, and I hope they don't get upset at me because it's going to be my new community. But you never really give it a lot of thought. You're driving through these, these beautiful small Texas towns.
Especially after the expressway.
Yeah, and you're just kind of like, okay, no big deal. And then, we bought this property out there. And it dawned on me because I have a 9-month-old daughter. And I was like, I wonder what the schools are like. Like, I didn't think about the whole small town Texas thing until that point. It was too late. I already signed the paperwork, right?
Yeah, the only thing I think about is like, what are these?
Yeah, exactly. I see the big water tower. It says, the fighting jerseys. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And so the first chance I had to interact with the school district was when the chief of police in Falfurrias, Chief Garcia, and the assistant chief, Gano, they called me and said, hey, can you come up and just kind of give us another set of eyes? And man, yes. Yeah. What a great school district.
That's awesome.
What great teachers, the superintendent, just everything, their school resource officer, their security officers, and I got to kind of feel the community as far as education goes. And it was exciting because you're right. I think if you can look at a school district that you didn't even know existed, and then I can look at it and be so happy and comfortable with it because they're doing such a great job, I think that speaks volumes for where we're at here in South Texas. And that trend needs to continue.
Yeah. So what are some of the things I see you have?
Well, before you ask that, let me ask you this. When we were having the training last time, you specifically were talking about when like the active shooter goes into the actual place, right? And then the police are coming in, the officers, and they're trained to do a certain thing. So I think you were talking about somebody that got shot in the leg. Well, the officer is trained to be able to still pay attention to what's going on.
See, and that's the power of this training. When we get asked to come train, that's the power of it, knowledge, the information. So a lot of people don't think about the incident. What do we do during the incident? So some of the things we talk about in the training, like you said, for example, is we talk about the run, hide, fight. The run, hide, fight is the 3. That's that primitive basic instinct that we want people to tap into when they find themselves in crisis. Now, when we get to the run portion of that, Okay, we start breaking it down. What does run mean? What do you have to practice? What do you have to think about? And one of those is, when you're exiting the building, you're running the building. You're going to be there's fight or flight. You're going to be in flight. You're just getting out. But those officers who are arriving, they're in fight. Mm-hmm. So there's different things that we have to train our deputies and our officers to do. And one of the big things, and I think it kind of surprises everyone, is that when our officers are arriving, let's say that first officer arrives on scene, we do something called a single officer response, which means that first officer arrives and it's not a very comfortable word to use, it is in our profession, but they will violently respond to that incident, meaning that they are actively trying to stop the person who's committing this act, which means they're trying to find them. And they're being driven. They have a driving force, whether it's gunfire, it's whatever the case may be, somebody telling them he's over there.
Or yells,
they have
cries,
a driving force to go stop that shooter. And one of the hardest things we have to teach our officers is to not render aid at that moment. And that's tough.
Yeah.
But we have all our officers are medically trained. We have they're all trauma trained. They know they're experts in the use of tourniquets, occlusive dressings, hemostatic gauzes, all these different things that we train our deputy sheriffs to do. And we have to train them to step over that one person who has a really simple fix that would save their life because they're bleeding out and they're not going to be here for another minute or two. And we have to train our officers. We have to beat it into them to step over that person because they have to stop the shooter. And if they were to spend those 30 seconds fixing that one person and there's 12 more gunshots.
Yeah, it could translate to 12 more deaths.
The math of it is horrible. And so this is the reality that in law enforcement we deal with as professionals. This is the reality of the world. And we kind of have to explain that to the community the best way we can. And so we use that example to kind of push the medical portion. And we tell the community, okay, listen, an aortal bleed, okay, whether it's, whatever it is, your arms, your legs, an aortal bleed, you have about 3 minutes before you reach that point of no return, okay? Law enforcement response is about 3 or 4 minutes. So who's going to help you on that bleed? Mm-hmm. And the answer, unfortunately, I think what we've gotten to, I can tell you where we're at here in South Texas. I can't really speak for other departments, but I can speak for us because we train very closely. DPS and Border Patrol and the city constable's office, us, we're very close in the way that we train. We've kind of hit this ceiling. And I can kind of listen to this for a second. So we've hit this ceiling. Okay, we have trained. We've been training for a decade. We have the best equipment. We have the best vehicles. We have the best training. We have given so much of ourselves and our assets into training for the response to a crisis. But we've hit this ceiling where we can't get a faster vehicle. We can't get a better gun. We can't train for more time. And we've hit this peak where we're waiting for the next change, the next evolution so that we can continue to grow, but we hit the ceiling. But here's the thing. When law enforcement arrives, 4 things happen. They arrest the shooter. They kill the shooter. The shooter commits suicide, or the shooter escapes and is recaptured later. But all these things happen on the arrival of law enforcement. But it takes us 4 minutes to get there. But the incident is over in those 4 minutes. Mm-hmm. What is happening in those first 4 minutes? And the thing is this, we're not there. So it no longer matters how fast our cars are, how good our body armor is, how well we're trained, because the incident is done when we arrive. What are we doing for those first 4 minutes? And that's the challenge to the community. How can we prepare you guys for those first 4 minutes? And the great news is this, there is an answer. I can give people the keys to success for those first 4 minutes, and it is nothing complex. And if knowing that information, they can find success in those 4 minutes, they can deny that shooter success for 4 minutes. And when we arrive, we are certainly going to deny them after that. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the incident, we've completely denied that shooter the one thing that they want, which is success, which is, a tragedy.
Carnage.
And if we can continue to do that over and over again, this trend will end. Mm-hmm. It will end.
Let me ask you this.
It's going to take that combined effort.
Let me ask you this. You're asking, so for what you're saying is you're actually asking for the teachers to jump in and do something about this.
Yeah, teachers and students and parents and anybody. Look, if you get stuck, let's look at the incident that happened, for example, at the mall. 4 years ago, we thought we had an active shooter here at the mall in McAllen. Thank God it wasn't. It was that robbery. Instead, it was that aggravated robbery. Now, let's create a situation, an imaginary situation, that had been an active shooter. Okay, gunfire, bullets are flying everywhere, and I get shot in the leg. And you guys, the three of us are out there shopping together, whatever, and you drag me into the nearest store, and they close the gate, and we're all barricading inside that store because that's what we're going to do. Now, who's going to deal with the injury to my leg? Not law enforcement.
Yeah.
They're on their way. And when they get here, after 3-4 minutes, they have to deal with the shooter. So now that we're locked in one of 70 stores in that mall, because law enforcement's going to have to go open each one of those individually and clear them and bring the people out. So for the next 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half before that door finally gets opened by law enforcement, or there's some sort of a response
You're
for
wounded
us.
and bleeding, yeah.
I'm wounded and bleeding, and I'm told you right now that it's 3 minutes. So who's going to take care of me? And see, we want we want to have this very tough conversation with our communities and be very honest and say, listen, we're gonna do our best to get to you, but look, we're trying to end this trend, and it has to be a partnership. We're telling our community, let's do some medical training. Let's show you guys that you can spend $20 and you can buy a tourniquet, and let me show you how easy it is to use it. And listen, this fits in a purse. This fits in a backpack. This fits in a pocket. This fits anywhere. A car, this in a console, anywhere that you can think of, this little thing fits. And this right here is the key to success. This will stop that arterial bleed. This will put a pause on those 3 minutes.
It'll buy more minutes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how important is it? How important would it be to be able to give this key to success to our community? Yeah, we carry this, but again,
The
that
average
doesn't
person,
matter.
yeah.
Everybody needs to.
You know, we look at the statistics. We look at, there's something called a preventable death study. Every time that there's a mass killing, we study it and we ask ourselves, how many of those victims could have been saved? Okay. So for example, if we look at the Pulse nightclub shooting from Orlando, Florida, okay, we look at that shooting and what we discover is that 16 of those victims could have been saved.
Wow.
16, that's a huge number. We're talking over 30%. Okay. And what sort of injuries did they have? They had injuries that if you took the Stop the Bleed class, you would understand how to fix. And now what we're talking about here is if those people had received some sort of hands-on, knowledgeable intervention by themselves or by the people around them within 10 minutes, and if they had gotten to a hospital within 60 minutes, within that golden hour, they probably would have lived. And now the tragedy of the Orlando shooting is they were only a couple blocks from Orlando's trauma center.
Jeez.
My brother just sent me a video 3 days ago of the memorial site of Pulse. He lives in Florida. And he was in the area and he went to go visit it. And man, it is just chock full with, still to this day, flowers, memorabilia.
course.
It was a huge thing.
It was a tragedy.
You hear what the information you just gave me right now blew me away because you said 16 of the
16.
people
30%.
16, over 30%. If there had been a culture where, and of course, you know, we're never going to say, you know, they could have done it's. We're just talking. This is an academic look.
Correct.
Okay, this is an overview, an academic overview, but we know statistically, looking at it, if we had had a medical intervention, it could have been that great. It could have been 16. So what we're saying to our public is, if you can have a little bit more training, if you can say, hey, you know what? And people are like, well, why should I carry a tourniquet? That's a crazy world. And I tell them, hey, how many of you guys have fire extinguishers in your house?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
That's
Goddamn
not,
right.
Nobody's upset about that. You're
Yeah.
not going to go to a store and say, oh, you got fire extinguishers in here. You guys are crazy. I'm not going to shop here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is preparation. This is the new world. And we tell our business owners, you know what? Get that little kit, that little Stop the Bleed kit, or an IFAC, an individual first aid kit that's got all these tools in it. You spend the $100 and you put it behind the counter. And if we could get all
Every
of our
class
businesses
one
to do
would,
that.
yeah.
And I always when I teach the teachers and we go through this, the teachers, their eyes are wide open to the knowledge because it's all about knowledge. You
Yeah,
put
I'm tripping out too,
knowledge and tools together, we're unstoppable, right? And so the teachers, they always tell me, hey Rick, when you do the parents meeting, can you give them something from us? And I'm like, yeah. Hey, stop buying us coffee mugs and cactuses and chocolates. We don't want that anymore. Do we want your
Tourniquets
appreciation
and
week?
tourniquets and
Teacher
first aid
appreciation
kits.
week. We want spend the $25 on this.
Yeah.
You know, buy the hemostatic, gauze. Buy a heavy dressing. Imagine how much better we're going to feel when every teacher has one of those little kits in their desk. And now we always say, well, the school districts need to do that. It's a tough conversation because these things cost money.
Yeah, and schools are already underfunded.
And our schools are doing everything. Let me tell you, our schools are performing amazing with the amount of gear that they're buying and training that they're doing and everything else. But they're going to hit a limit. And you know what? And this is a conversation I've had with parents before. And for example, the parents will tell me, I want to know why we don't have a cop at every school. And I tell them, I think it's a great idea. Great idea. I said, the next time that the city tries to do a 3-cent hike in taxes, instead of trying to go lynch all the people that brought that up, let's just pay the 3 cents.
Yeah.
Because if that's my fair share to put a police officer in every single school,
It's
let's
more
do it.
than
Because at the
worth
end of the day, when you want something, when you say, I want the school to do this, I want the city to do this, we're the ones that are paying for it.
Yeah.
And that's okay for certain things. Okay, I'm okay with that. You want a cop in every school? Fantastic. As a community, let's come together and let's make it happen. We want these kits in every classroom. Great. PTO, parents, come together. I've got 20 kids in this class. I've got 20 parents. Every parent pitches in $2, and your teacher now has a full kit in that classroom.
Wow.
Why aren't we taking more responsibility for this?
Let me ask you this, because I'm coming from it from, okay, you're asking now teachers that already could be underpaid, already
Oh, they
stressed
are.
out.
They are.
And now you're asking them to go get more training that they could possibly in the future have psychological effects down the line.
Sure.
How do you explain to a teacher, like, you
And see,
need to
here's
do
the
this?
thing, like we have to understand that this affects our community. Schools tends to be the focus because those are our kids, and that hits hard every time it happens there. What we're talking about here is the idea that we're going to acknowledge this is the world that we live in. Okay? And we're going to, I think our teachers, and I know a lot of teachers, they're overworked. They're underpaid. If you go into a classroom and it's a beautiful classroom, that was all that teacher's money to make that classroom beautiful and an educational environment for your kids. And they're heroes.
Yeah, they'll do it hands down.
Everything.
Yeah.
They will do everything for those kids. And it's a new set of kids every year, you know, and they just invest in their community that way. That's why I'm saying, parents, let's buy that kit for the teacher. I don't think that the teacher should have to do that, because that kit is going to be used on who?
Yeah.
What you're talking about is like once the teachers or the educators have to learn how to use that tourniquet or have to go through.
Well, God forbid they ever have to use it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is, you know, it's one of those things that, again, it's that acknowledgement of where we're at. The training, for example, you know, do people get triggered? You know, are things kind of upsetting? Is this a very hard topic to teach? It is. But at the end of the day, we still have a responsibility. You know, let's say for every 100 teachers that we teach, there's one teacher that this is very upsetting to them for whatever reason, and then that's perfectly fine. We're humans, and this is a tough topic. We have to just sit there and say, do we deprive 99 teachers of the training that is necessary? Do we deprive the school district or the school? We have to create a way, again, to make this part of our culture. And we're in those beginning stages right now where this is a very tough topic.
Yeah, it's back when 9/11 happened. After 9/11, I guess the whole era of TSA
happened. It started.
You know, and now, like you said, it's a part of our children's cultures. I remember walking into like you said, to the airports, and you know, people be smoking, you know, outside and stuff like that. It's just like things have changed. I think the teachers nowadays are all going into that field of work with the understanding that shit happens. And
I agree.
And I don't think that there should be a teacher out there who doesn't have the training.
And let me tell you, from dealing with thousands of teachers, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of teachers, they're leading the charge. I have not met the teacher that is upset about this.
That's refreshing to hear.
Every teacher, they come up to me after the classes and they're like, Rick, show me the website where I can buy these things.
Yeah.
Even though we just talked about getting the PTA and getting the parents, they don't care. They're not waiting the week. And these are our teachers. These people, you know, they're dedicated professionals.
Yeah,
and I can tell you, of the probably 10,000, just under 10,000 teachers that I've dealt with in the last few years, they're leading the charge in this. They want safe schools. They want these kids. They want the training. There's a hunger because they care about what they do.
how do you feel? And my children, I have a 23-year-old son and a 19-year-old daughter, so they're already on college campuses where this kind of stuff happens as well. But what do you think the community's response will be to teachers who want to carry concealed on campus?
It's a tough conversation. So we're talking about, here's a school marshal program. There's programs out there where the teachers are trained, and they're going to be the ones that are kind of those
that one designated person
before law enforcement arrives. So there's a lot of different opinions on this. Now, personally speaking, just me personally, from everything that I've seen, these programs work for very small schools, because you have a very controlled environment. You have something that is very easy to manage. Let's say, for example, the city of McAllen, if they were to just one day say, we're going to arm our teachers, there's so much more to it than just that. Understand this. When that first responding officer arrives to this crisis, there is a percentage of them, and it is a very uncomfortable number of them, that are killed within the first 15, 20 seconds.
Wow.
And this is cops?
This is cops. We train our entire lives. We have the best gear, the best equipment. Our mind is focused on this, and we are still dying like by the dozens and dozens within the first few seconds of this engagement.
It's just simple facts.
Here we just talked about the teachers and everything they do. How are we going to burden them with another task, which is not just going to be arming them, but making them go through continual training, use of force training, when is the proper time to use? And let's say that teacher misses that one shot, and that shot goes through the drywall and hits a student in the classroom adjacent to that. That teacher's responsible for that student's injury or death. That's a tough thing.
Yeah.
That's something that, as professionals, as law enforcement officers, that is something that we have acknowledged, and it is a part of our career, and it is something that, quite honestly, we fear every time we pull out our weapon, that we have to be proficient, we have to be perfect, because as a cop, you make a mistake with the best of intentions, you go to prison. Wow. And that's a horrible thing, but it's something that we acknowledge. It's part of our profession. To put that additional burden on teachers, I just don't see how it makes sense. Now, you talk about very small school districts, and there's been great success where you have a teacher or administrator that's former law enforcement or military, and they dedicate the time to doing that, and that teacher is armed, and we're talking about there's only a few dozen people that in a couple of buildings that teacher is responsible for. That is a good speed bump. That is a good solution, that intermediary to hold that threat while law enforcement arrives. So there are times where I think it's a good idea, but I'm very hesitant to sit here and say we need to arm teachers. I think what we need to do is we need to just swallow the pill, and we need to start putting police officers on campuses, and not just regular cops, but school resource officers, SROs. These officers are trained to deal with kids, interact with kids. Look, your average street cop, our deputies at the Dow County Sheriff's Office, they're amazing at what they do. They wear many hats. But at the end of the day, you put one of our street-hardened deputies into an elementary school, that's just not a real great idea. You know what I'm saying? And it's not that, he's got kids, and I'm sure he or she will be fine.
But they're not trained.
That's not what we do. Now, you get a school resource officer, you get a police department that dedicates to educating these officers, and these officers go through a completely different set of certifications and trainings. They can be an enriching factor in these kids' lives. Not just a law enforcement and a security factor, but an enriching educational factor in their lives. And I think as a community in our school districts, we need to say, okay, I think that this is what we need to do, and we need to invest into doing that. Police officers needs to be the investment that our community needs to make. And a lot of our communities are doing it. Look at, I think it's La Jolla is hiring, I think it's 22 or 23, 26, brand new school resource officers.
Wow.
And that's the trend.
La Jolla's been doing that for years.
We have a very active ISD.
I went to La Jolla before I dropped out, but back in my days in the early 90s, occasionally we would have the late Melo Ochoa, the judge, would be out there in the campus and stuff, and we'd have cops walking and stuff, and again, 4,000 or 5,000 students. So,
and you're talking close. I think it's close to 30,000 now.
Oh, geez.
The district is monstrous. I think it may be, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's one of the largest, if not the largest one in South Texas. And see, they have an amazing police department, a school police department. They've got amazing officers. They've got great resources. They're hiring a bunch more because the school made the decision. What do? Do we hire more security officers? Do we do this? And they bit the bullet and they said, you know what? it's an expense. Hiring a police officer is an expense.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap, but they said, you know what, it's important. And now I sometimes take the jab at administrators when we start talking about this. We talk about it one-on-one in the hallways, and they're like, well, Rick, I don't know, man, that's kind of expensive and this and that. And I ask them, well, how much money do you guys spend on football jerseys?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of get a weird look from them, and it kind of refocuses things because, we have to deal with this. Mm-hmm. But again, I will say here in the Valley, in South Texas, and all the districts that I've been training with, from IDEA campuses to public school districts to private Christian schools, everybody's head is on right, and everybody's doing the right thing. Because let me tell you, I would call them out in a heartbeat. I don't pull a punch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't. Not with these kind of topics. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Rick. These active shooters, obviously they're researching, they're looking through stuff, they're using social media. What are they looking for, or what have you seen in the past that's kind of like this is what they do to pick a school?
So we really don't have a lot of information on that. We do have some of these shooters that we're able to interview because they're arrested, they're not killed or kill themselves or whatever the case may be. Now we really don't have per se a profile of what an active shooter is. We've seen 10-year-old boys, 12-year-old girls,
the randomness
teenagers. We've seen married couples working together in these acts of violence, attorneys, homeless people, everyone that you could possibly imagine. The FBI did a 20-year study a couple of years ago, over 333 mass violence attacks. So we're talking about a lot, and there's a lot of different types of people that do it. But the one commonality there seems to be is that when they decide to commit this act of violence, when it's a choice, they spend time in preparing and researching. Now, that's a conversation I have with the schools and with the businesses. I tell them, hey, when we do our training, take some pictures. Put it up on Facebook. Hey guys, today at such and such dental office,
let the bad guys know.
Yeah, we had the Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office come talk to us about active shooter protocol, and we did some drills, and we feel so much safer now. We're better prepared. And you know what? Let's say that there's someone in the community who said, I'm going to go shoot up a dentist's office. And when they start going online to Facebook pages to looking at what dentist's office they're going to go to, if they come across this dentist's office who posted that they're preparing and they're training and they're doing things and this, that, and the other.
It may deter them, yeah.
That person wants success. That shooter wants to be successful. They're going to pick, there's hard targets and soft targets. They're going to go after a soft target, a target that seems that it's going to give them the highest degree of success. And if we can be very proactive in what we do in our trainings and other things, that's going to deter them. And it's a big deal to do things like that, to be very public. This isn't something to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And I've gone to places before, I've gone to businesses, and they're like, nope, we're not going to put anything on social media. This is just something real quiet we're doing. And, okay, that's ultimately that's their choice. But I tell them, listen,
the bad guys are watching as well.
Yeah. Let's let people know that we're prepared. Let's let people know that we're not victims.
And that the training's available. I didn't even.
Oh, absolutely.
It never even occurred to me that there would be a training being offered to private entities. I get schools, I get churches, banks,
and most of your police departments are doing this.
Wow.
For example, we just did a great little seminar with Weslaco. Okay, so we were over at Knapp Medical Center, and the chief of police over there, Joey Rivera, Dr. Rivera, he was gracious. He hosted us there at Knapp, and we did the 2-hour Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office course. And he was there, the fire chief was there, all the people from their city. And so we just kind of like this round table with all the members of the community, the business owners, everybody else. And we said, listen, this is the information that's out there. Call the Weslaco Police Department. They will send their officers to your churches. They will send your officers to your businesses, to your schools, and they will train you. We're, as law enforcement, speaking as a community law enforcement, we have these tools. And that's why, we want people to know all you have to do is pick up the phone.
Yeah.
The sheriff's office is not even close to being the only one doing this. We're not at all. Every police department, is doing this. You go to your fire departments, they're teaching the Stop the Bleed classes for free.
Yeah.
Is that part of the curriculum that you teach?
So what we do is we do kind of an introduction to it. We kind of get everybody, we kind of pique interest in it because it is a separate class. But we do talk about it, and we kind of demonstrate things, and we pique the interest in it because the school districts are putting their nurses and staff through Stop the Bleed. So for example, like when we did the Brooks County training for the ISD up there. The chief of police and the chief of the fire department were there for Falfurrias. And the chief of the fire department stood up and said, guys, to the community, hey, come on down to the fire department twice a month for free, and we'll train you and stop the bleed.
Wow.
DHR. DHR has an amazing program for Stop the Bleed. And the same thing. You get on the DHR Facebook page, and a couple of times a month, they offer Stop the Bleed courses for free. There is a ton of material out there in the community of law enforcement, to fire, first responders, the hospital systems, where we want to educate our communities, but we can't get the word out there sometimes.
You brought some interesting items, and it's kind of for the Stop the Bleed, correct?
Yes, yeah. This is the medical portion when we teach.
Could you kind of run us through what you would normally do?
So what we do is always bring in this leg, to kind of demonstrate some of the things. So what we talk about during the course, we talk about kind of the 3 steps when it comes to Stop the Bleed. Okay, and it's a very abridged version of it. Again, it's kind of an introduction to get them interested in it. So what we do is we talk about the tourniquet, and we talk about the CAT tourniquet, the combat application tourniquet, how it works, how it's used. I demonstrate it on myself, and then I get somebody from the audience, and I bring them up to the leg, and I have them demonstrate it, and so that they can see how very simple it is. Yeah. It's absolutely so simple. So they do that, and it's a confidence builder in the group, because they're like, oh man, yeah, that teacher just did it, and it was super easy, and they didn't mess it up, and they did it in like 20 seconds. So we put the tourniquet on the leg, and then we kind of talk about the progression of what we're doing, the medical intervention, what the progression is. So we've stopped the arterial bleed, but the injury itself, we still have bleeding. Okay, so we still have veins, capillaries, bones are very, they have a lot of blood in them, so all these other issues. So then the next thing we talk about is the gauze. And so we talk about the different types of gauze. There's the hemostatic agents. There's gauze that has that hemostatic chemical in it, which is going to help
stop the bleeding.
Which is going to help stop the bleeding. And we talk about how to pack the wound. We talk about all the little details about how to do that. I demonstrated here on the leg. Everybody kind of gets a little grossed out, because I'm ramming that gauze into this. And,
like, when does that stop, man?
And it just keeps going and keeps going. And we talk about the importance of it and why. And again, even though it's kind of an uncomfortable thing to think about doing, it's a very simple skill. And then at the very end, we talk about putting whatever's left on top and maintaining pressure for a few minutes, and then the final step being to put on the heavy bandage so that we can wrap this person up, and we can get them ready to leave on an ambulance. And we show them this in a span of just a few minutes, demonstrating and talking. I don't go heavy on medical terminology. When I explain the tourniquet, I say, okay, it's got a little buckle on top, and then it's got this little stick thing. I'm not sitting here saying this is the windlass. Because nobody cares about the terminology, and I don't want to get that block, that mental block when you start going nerd on everybody. And so I explained it very easily, and people come up to me afterwards, and they're like, that's really all it takes to save this person's life? And I'm like, yeah, this person was going to pass away in 3 or 4 minutes. But with these simple things that cost $40 together, you build your little kit and you put that in your car. It's in your house, because we're not talking about violence. Okay, we're talking about the dad who falls off the roof, and when he tried to brace himself, he snaps that arm and it severs an artery. We're talking about the lawnmower accident. We're talking about the machine accident at work. We're talking about the hunting accident at the blind. We're talking about
what those freak accidents would be considered.
We're talking about so many things. We're talking about so many things that are not violence, but they are critical incidents. This is crisis. And having spent those $40, the ability, the power that person now has. Can you imagine? And I always say that. You put education with tools, and it's an unstoppable thing. So they go and they take the class where the sheriff's office, with the fire department, with DHR, whoever it is, take the class. Okay? Then you go online and you spend $40 and you buy a couple of these things that you need. And then you have this little kit in your car. And now, hopefully it never happens, but we're going to live in the real world.
It could be a simple car accident
And now you have the tools. You're going to sit there, you're going to walk up to that car, it's going to be you, and you're going to look over to the passenger side of that person that you love who has their hand through the window, and you're going to see that spurt. And you're going to remember, that's an artery. And then to be able to reach in your glove box and flawlessly perform such a simple task that is going to keep this person in your life. But if you haven't spent the $40 and you didn't call us, or you didn't go to DHR, you never got the training in it, you're going to spend the last 3 minutes with
watching
that person.
them.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
And it's
pretty
a horrible
powerful.
thing. And people always ask, I ask my classes, what's the value of a human life? You got to write a check for somebody you love right now. What's that check?
Sure.
Everybody says, no, we can't put a number on it. And I tell them, you're wrong. It's $40. Because if I spent the $40, I'm going to save that person I love. They were worth $40. But if I didn't spend the $40, I'm going to watch that person die. And it's because I did not think they were worth $40.
It's funny because it would never occur to me to build something like that,
Yeah,
to
and,
build
and the
a
kits,
kit like
and the
that.
kits are
man.
easy. Look, you just get yourself a little bag, a couple of hemostatics. And I always encourage people, buy more than one of each. It's good. None of the ones I've been to required one of everything.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to be redundant. Your heavy bandages, you know, you have your tourniquets. If you've got small kids, you know, these tourniquets only compress to a certain point, and you've got little arms and little legs. You're going to use a different type of tourniquet, a SWAT T tourniquet. We'll show them how to use that too. Regular gauze, you know, the little Mylar blankets, because we want to keep body temperature up to help for clotting. And I always tell my classes, gloves. Listen, this is the first thing. You start your kits with gloves. Gloves are free. When you go to the doctor's office and that dude walks out, you start jacking gloves. Okay? I've got a $40 copay. I'm taking something. Right? So if my doctor's watching this, I apologize. But
It's me.
hey, you left me alone there too long. Right?
I've been stealing the gloves.
So yeah, so I mean, start with gloves. That's an easy way to start your kit. And then you just make these purchases and you put this. And I ask my classes, like, where do you put the kits? You know, in your car, in your kid's car, in your wife's car. You have one at the ranch. You have one under the sink. You have one in the garage. You have one at work. You know, we're talking about $40 investments, and it's hopefully never going to get used. But you, if anything, you're going to pay for that peace of mind that you know you're prepared.
Yeah.
And it's the same reason that we don't blink to put on our seatbelt.
Yeah.
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
To buy a fire extinguisher, it's peace of mind. To put in a smoke detector, it's peace of mind. Well, it's time to acknowledge that there's other things we also need to do in this new and horrible kind of sounding world where these incidents are happening, and we need to train.
Trauma kits like
We
that.
need to have kids, and that's the tough part of the conversation is having people acknowledge that this is the world that we live in. And I always, one of the things that I bring up with my classes, I tell them, listen, you know, what was the oldest school attack that you can think of? What's the first school attack that you can think of? Kind of the one that kind of just made everything happen.
I would say Columbine.
Columbine,
gonna
right?
Columbine
Yeah.
too,
So
yeah.
1999, Littleton, Colorado, were over 20 years ago. But yet, the deadliest school attack in our nation's history, the deadliest one, we're coming up to the 100-year anniversary.
Wow.
It happened in Bath, Michigan in 1927, the Bath School Massacre. 45 people were killed in that attack. No one ever knows about it.
I didn't even know that.
No one knows
Yeah.
about it. But if you Google deadliest school attack in U.S. history, there it is. You can see the pictures. You can see the
Wow.
newsreels. You can read. It's not a secret. So this has actually been happening a lot longer than people believe. And I look at schools and I go, the deadliest school attack in our nation's history from an outside person coming in who wanted to kill kids and teachers. You know, we're coming up to the 100-year anniversary, 1927, and we're barely now having the conversation about security. I said, okay, fine. Let's not dwell on that. Let's start doing it now.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at, this brave new approach of living in this world.
How can school districts and teachers and private entities get a hold of you guys for trainings and stuff?
So, like I said, your local law enforcement agency, we've got some great police departments and fire departments out there that are offering this training. Of course, the Hidalgo County Sheriff's Office, we've been doing this for like the last 6 years. We've trained about 50,000 people throughout the state of Texas.
Wow.
So this is way before Uvalde. This is way before anything. Our sheriff had the insight to be doing this a long, long time ago. You call us. My email is ricardo.garcia at hidalgoso, like sheriff's office.org. So one more time, ricardo.garcia at hidalgoso.org. And it's just a matter of scheduling. You know, we'll get you on the schedule. We'll make it happen. Our boss, he doesn't care who calls. Look, he's got me going to Bastrop. You know, I go to A&M. I go to Laredo. This afternoon, I'm going to be in Raymondville.
Yeah, you're going everywhere.
Yeah, and let me tell you, our sheriff, he is the sheriff of Hidalgo County, and we serve the people of Hidalgo County first. That's our priority. But I'm a Texas peace officer, and this is all our community. And our sheriff will send me wherever there is a need.
Wow. Well, you said it best here, and you guys heard it here. Here's where to call Rick Garcia and get your training, get y'all's faculty up to par, or at least comfortable with the fact that But this is real, and it can hit our schools. It can hit our kids, and we're not protected from these people in the ways that we like to think. Get informed.
Get educated.
Get educated, and learn to deal with kind of the reality that we find ourselves living in now. Man, this has been super, super cool. Rick, I really appreciate you coming out
Thank
here,
you for the
man.
invitation.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Anything that we can help to
Spread the word.
spread the word.
Just education,
Let's do it.
information.
Let's put me to work. Let's put me to
Before you
work.
retire.
Before I retire, let's put me to work.
We
Let's
need
do
to
it.
do that because we have the facility here. You can do kind of little mini trainings and develop a video and just email it to
And let
them.
me
I don't
tell you,
know.
I think the biggest thing, and if anybody is inspired to do this, if you have a doctor's office or something like that, don't just do it for your employees. Invite the neighboring 5 offices.
Yeah.
If we're going to have a training, let's get everybody there.
Yeah.
There's no reason why we're not getting our neighbors involved in this.
like
That makes sense.
Let's do it. This is a community effort. This is a community goal that we have to push this out, and we're going to have to work together. And together really is the operative word here. If you have access to, if you're a hotel owner and you've got a convention room that seats 80 people, call me.
Yeah.
And let's put something out to that community, and let's get everybody from that community in that convention room, and let's teach. Let's get this done. I am your servant. I belong to you. I am here for the people of Hidalgo County. Your sheriff has made it very clear the importance of this mission. Eddie Guerra, this is the absolute one of the top things he has on his list. And our sheriff has said, please get this information out there, and we're going to do it.
We're going to help.
Absolutely. Awareness is at the top of our list. So on behalf of Studio 4240, thank you very much, Rick. We appreciate you, man. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Next time.